Launching a new project and endeavor is blissfully cruel in the world of today. On the one hand, we have a lot of technology that can help us make movies, cartoons, podcasts, or music a reality. On the other hand, we often forget that these things are just tools, designed to help us through the difficult growing pains of building a team, developing a voice, and creating an audience for the things that we love. More than ever, people have the means to create anything. Nowadays, being creative doesn't have software or hardware limitations, and I like that. Sure, there's a lot more competition because there's easier access to the goodies, but it also means that I and everyone listening still have to rely on people skills, brainstorming, and the inevitability of learning even more to keep doing the things we love. My guest today is Gerald Glassford, a man much like me who spends his life in the trenches. We're both creative people, fueled by a passion that's hard to describe, and by a goal that keeps telling us it's all worth it. Enjoy the show. Do you like that they're like studio bottles of water? They're just enough to quench your thirst, but not quite enough that one will do you.
Like at the hotels. It's like they're courtesy, but they're really not trying to make it a courtesy.
Like, here's your little sippy cup. I think they use like those dentist fluoride cups.
Yep.
Here you go. Here's your complimentary beverage, Mr. Glassford.
We really want you to spend $10 down at the bar.
It's a true story. They do. Here's your free appetizer for a cocktail weenie. Come join us for our selection of craft beers. Only $12.50 a micro pint.
There you go. And then you've got happy hour, which brings it down to $6.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Woohoo!
So welcome to the romantically lit Rob McCallum Film Studio for the Trenches.
I love the mood lighting.
I feel like we've done this once or twice because we talk all the time.
Yes.
But I'm joined by Gerald Glassford today, who's a man that spends his life in the trenches, like your humble host here. And what is that like, and why do you like doing it?
Well, first off, it's awesome being here. It's a true honor to be on the trenches. I feel like I'm part of an elite club now.
As Scott Bakula looks over your shoulder.
I know. He's just like staring at me, for better or for worse.
Oh, boy.
Especially as he pulls out his Cajun accent.
You leave NCIS New Orleans out of this, mister.
All right. I'll try. But I guess, my name is Gerald, and I guess probably the best thing I'm known for right now, outside being an awesome, father to three awesome kids, and obviously a husband to an awesome wife here in Vegas.
I thought you were going to say two awesome wives.
No.
Three awesome kids, two awesome wives.
No, 2 marriages already, but I want to keep this one just fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess I'm probably best known for being the...
It just reminds me of the line from Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum's character. He's always on the lookout for a future ex, Mrs. Malcolm.
There you go.
Yeah.
But
so what are you known for? Sorry, I cut you off there with my pop culture antics.
Well, speaking of pop culture, I guess probably I'm one of the main people behind Pop Culture Cosmos. It's an entity that deals with all aspects of the pop culture realm. We do a weekly show that obviously touches on some of the better aspects of our pop culture universe. And also as well, just we have a site that creates a lot of stories that brings out the great interests that there are in pop culture, from comic books, TV, video games, pro wrestling, collectibles, sci-fi, comic books, board games, you name it. Anything dealing with pop culture, we're into it, and we definitely want to talk about it and write about it as well.
And just so everybody can hear it at least once near the top of the show, where's the best place to get more info on the site and the cast?
Well, probably the best place to get more info on it is 2 places: Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook and popculturecosmos.wordpress.com.
Okay.
You can also check us out on Twitter, Pop Culture at Pop Culture Cosmo on Twitter, but Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook. If you go there,
Facebook is really the place.
Yeah, if you go there and you like us there, you get all the latest info, not only on our shows, but we make sure that we keep everybody informed on what's going on with all the different avenues of pop culture right there.
And Pop Culture Cosmos is your latest in a string of different projects that you're exploring and
oh yes,
evolving. I mean, this is all coming from some sort of crucial point in your life where you decided I want to do something creative.
Yes, indeed.
And when was that moment, and how powerful was it? Like, walk me through that moment and those emotions as you realized that, yes, I'm insane. I want to do something creative the rest of my life.
Well, I had touched on earlier back in high school and early in college that I got dabbled a little bit into television and film. Working for a local television station there, and also as well dealing with a lot of different special effects companies during the mid-90s as far as...
So tell me about that, because you got some great credits, and I love hearing these stories.
Well, the only actual credit I have is on the wonderful movie called Double Dragon, which is based
Scott Wolf, right?
Yes, Scott Wolf, and then also Alyssa Milano, which is probably the better part of it, and Robert Patrick, which is probably a role he'd like to forget. But that movie is obviously based off the video game concept. Didn't work out quite so well, but I did work for, like I said, 2 special effects companies, Boss Film Studios and Pacific Data Images. We made several films we worked on several films while I was there, including Outbreak, Species, Beverly Hills Cop 3, Angels in the Outfield, and just quite a few more. I worked on about 16 or 17 while I was there. So. And
what were you doing in terms of special effects with them?
Basically working on the back end as far as making sure that back then we worked with hexabyte tapes. So basically turning hexabyte tapes of what work was done or what work was needed to be done into film, and then transferring it back and forth to and from the studio that would be sent, so that the work that we were doing as far as from the animation standpoint would obviously go from a computer to a film, so that they could see what a developing project was looking like, and what an end result would finally eventually become. Because it's not like they would just go back then, they would go and put it on the computer and then on the film, and then go ahead and how should I say, finish it out and on one try. No, unfortunately, it would take repeated attempts to put it onto film, have them see it. Is the right color there? Is the right design there? Is the right animation there that we want? If it wasn't, we would go back to the drawing board and try and make it better and better and better. And that process took, sometimes even for a 2-minute scene, it would take a month, 2 months at a time.
And what was your role specifically? Were you an animator? Were you a production manager?
I dealt with very little, unfortunately, with the animation. I wish I would have, looking back in hindsight. A little bit as far as dealing with a lot of the color correction, but mainly as far as what I was doing as far as mechanically and coding, trying to make sure and responsible for overseeing the process and transfer between hexabyte tape to film, as far as once the product has finished, or when the movie studios sent in the footage that they wanted to add special effects to, we would take the film and turn it on to hexabyte tape, so that then again the animators could go ahead and work on it and put the actual effects. So.
And this is in LA.
Mm-hmm. The beautiful LA. I was looking at a 2.5-hour drive each and every morning. I don't miss those at all, but as my friend who's still in the industry to some extent, Mark DiNicola, we would go and stare out and just look out. Our studio was across the street from Paramount, and so we would spend days sometimes while we were doing our work and just stare out and look at the famous Paramount gates, and kind of wish we were there.
Right. Hoping one day maybe to do some effects for Next Gen or...
Yeah, something like that. Or, I had at one time had this fancy thought of actually being in front of the camera, like some dreamers that you are when you work down in Hollywood. But yeah, that
as an actor or as like a host or what?
Something like that. Just, you thought you actually had what it takes to be in you, to thought that you could go ahead and do those kinds of cool things. And then reality sets in and life sets in. Then you realize maybe it's not in your best interest to try to pursue that kind of passion.
I'm still in the delusion. I, for some reason, keep appearing in the projects I do. And now look at you. You're actually a personality and you are a host. You're just more audio based. So you haven't escaped that desire totally.
Well, it's actually, and that's part's enjoyable, because now that I reach another different stage of my life, it's, You get a better reflection on who you are as an individual and things that you like to do and would like to accomplish. And it's so cool that now I get to go ahead and be more of who I want to be with the technology and the way the world's set up now these days, back to when it was in the 80s and 90s.
We're definitely in the Wayback Machine now.
Yes.
So what was the big takeaway, I guess, from working at that effects studio, Boss Films? What was that like?
Well,
and why did it come to an end, and where did you go?
Just layoffs are concerned. PDI and Boss Films, if you're not working on a project, you're working on something. If you don't have those consistently projects coming down the pike, you're expendable, and you're deemed expendable, in any shape or form. So unfortunately, it's not very stable work out there in Hollywood, and when you work out there, you are basically setting yourself up for not a viable future unless you reach a top level. So it's very political. It's very cutthroat. It's there.
And those are your takeaways.
Those are my takeaways as far as from that aspect. But I did get enjoyment every morning when we went to dailies and we went to a little, basically a little. What would you say? Like almost like a film theater, and you would go there and you sit down and you watch the dailies as far as the stuff that you were working on the night before that just came back from the film lab, and you notice while all the other people there may not be realizing it or may have other thoughts on their mind or what have you, you realize that this is going to go up to the film audience, and you realize that what you're doing each and every day is going to make hopefully, unless you work on Double Dragon, hopefully people very happy. So
when you go to some of these cons, and I know you've been to a bunch of them,
yes,
for a bunch of different roles, we need to get you a shirt that says "I worked on Double Dragon."
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
It would be wicked.
No.
Come on. You go to all these video game things, and as do I think you'd get a lot of street cred.
No.
I bet you I can get you a panel at some con talking about your experience working on Double Dragon.
Probably more on Natural Born Killers.
Oh, okay. Well, wasn't Double Dragon kind of a natural born killer for you?
Something like that. But yeah, Natural Born Killers was something else entirely, but that was kind of a weird experience as well. So it's just as far as the things that were asked for, the special effects that were required. I think I once told you that there was like some scenes as far as it's concerned that even at that time we're pushing the envelope that not only what they were asking us to do as a film studio, as far as a special effects company, but also as far as pushing the envelope as far as from a controversial nature.
Yeah, what's acceptable to have in a movie.
Exactly. And it was just like, was this really adding to it? Natural Born Killers obviously goes way off the map as far as it's concerned. And that's what, to people that enjoy it, that's what it's really all about, and that part I get. But when you really start to go and take creative license with it, how much is too much as far as, and it takes away from the overall movie,
But I mean, looking back at that film, it's not as shocking as it was when it came out.
No, now, but back then it was
sure. It was just like, oh my god, you should not watch this, or this should not be a movie, which makes everybody want to watch it.
Yeah, now it's just like it probably be set on 3:00 in the afternoon and no one would notice.
Yeah,
so.
on PBS.
Yeah, exactly. So
what happens after?
Right before Unearthly.
Yeah, exactly. If you're lucky enough. So what happens? Do you leave LA at this point and come to Vegas? Or?
Yeah, we got tired. My first wife and I got tired of actually being around that scene, and I just thought a better future was had at that time here in Vegas. So we.
I love that you preface it at that time.
At that time, it was. Vegas was a lot cheaper then.
Still is.
And then just headed out here or whatnot, and been out here ever since. I guess when it comes to that creative thing, because when you come out here and you get sucked into the life as far as everything, either within casinos or based around casinos, because that's what
80%, right, of all jobs.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what this town is. So you get sucked in, and your life becomes that right away, and then after a while, you realize, is this all I'm doing with myself? And I just felt at some point that I needed to make a change, and I left the car rental industry and thought to myself, what do I really want to do? And running a game store opportunity came up, and I just thought, you know what? I've always been a fan of video games. I've always way back since I got my first Pong. That tells you how old I am. And I forgot my first Atari 2600 at the Treasury department store, if anybody remembers that. But, I remember those times, and I've been playing video games ever since. And I just thought maybe, let's go ahead and do it. Let's take a chance. And we're running a game store for a while, Game Crazy, rest in peace. That was a really cool experience. But, I got the taste to do something more. And I was going to think about starting to open up my own game store, whatnot, crazy thing as was. And I was checking around for stuff and pricing and whatnot. But it came to the point where it just looked like it was not going to, especially with Game Crazy meeting its unsightful end, and GameStop at that point in time becoming the entity as far as gaming in the world.
What year is this around?
2008.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, is it the right financial thing to do? I'm not sure. Well, I got approached by one of my employees at that time, Nick, who as Angry Nick, who's at times can be an angry individual, but
he's a good guy.
He is a good guy, and I wish all the best for him.
He is angry,
but I wish all the best for him. But yes, he can be angry at times. It's actually, some of his best moments on radio and on podcasting have been via his anger moments. But good guy. He actually gave the suggestion that we have this entity. Why don't we go ahead and make a website out of it? And I'm like, well, okay, that sounds like a great idea. That sounds like an awesome idea. It doesn't sound like there's much to it. And boy,
So what was
9 years later? Do I know something else about that?
What was the entity, and what was he really pitching you for everybody that doesn't know? Set this up because he's your employee. He worked
yes,
at Game Crazy with you.
Yes. So we decided to go ahead because, like I said, we had both left Game Crazy by that time, and just decided to go ahead and start a site called YourGameSource.com, which up until 2016 was one of the major sources of information on the video game scene for news and information, and it's still via social media. It still is today. The remnants of it is still very strong today, because if you go there, we're still, I'm still posting and sharing along with Aaron, who also worked at the store with me one time.
One time on a Wednesday afternoon, Aaron had one shift.
Yes, no, he actually had more than that. He's a good guy as well. Very hardcore player as far as loves the JRPGs, loves his the WoW and whatnot. But I'll tell you what, we still go ahead and report on everything going on within the video game industry through social media. But yeah, YourGameSource.com was our initiation into the video game press scene.
What was the concept behind it? Was it just like, hey, we should just report online using the internet and share articles, or write our own, or have our own show?
Actually do the whole thing, because we knew we didn't have the resources, obviously, at that time to match an IGN or a GameSpot or what have you. We just thought, basically, if we take and grab the news and information we have, we can build upon that with our own columns, with our own insight, via also writing, but also at that time a burgeoning technology. It sounds like we're going again on the Wayback Machine, but it's really, podcasting is still recent technology. And that time he's like, well, why don't we do a podcast, Gerald? And it's like, well, what's a podcast, Nick? And it's like, well, it's like an internet radio, thing. I'm like, wow, okay, let's give it a shot. So we
now, but why did that appeal to you?
Basically, it was another way to express our thoughts on the video game scene. It's it's easy to write about it, whatnot, and write articles, whatnot. But when it really comes from podcasting, it's you. You're not hiding behind a keyboard. You're truly expressing yourself and who you are. And there's less of a veil that goes up when you're going ahead and speaking into a microphone, because it's your voice. It's not someone else's, and it's not something that you can maybe use better English on, or you can use better phrasing on when you're typing in a computer that may not exactly 100% be as specific as who you are when you are talking into a microphone and on a podcast.
So it's funny because you asked Nick what it is, and he said, well, it's a radio show for the internet. Mm-hmm. Not to get too far ahead, is that still what you believe podcasting is?
I still believe it's a way to communicate for a lot of individuals, whether that didn't get the chance before to go ahead and communicate to the world about what they feel, about what they think, and how they can also entertain as far as what they feel is going to be entertaining to an audience. Case in point, Pop Culture Cosmos. When we started that up, we wanted to go ahead and initially just boom, right, put it on the radio stations and whatnot. But then we realized quickly that there was a quicker way to get the word out on what a good idea we have and what a good concept we have, and that was going through the podcasting means.
Now you said GameSource was 8-9 years.
8-9 years, as far as it's concerned. I just closed it up last year as far as the website is concerned. Although social media, we're still going strong.
What does it look like the first year or so setting up something like... You're setting up a brand and kind of a company. I mean, I don't know if you guys were actually incorporated or whatever. So, walk me through that, and how did you know those steps to take, and what were the challenges in doing that, and where did you have to get more creative?
Well, I did have to get licensing as far as, here in Nevada and whatnot. But, obviously because I was going to go and still thinking, dabbling about into the video game industry as far as from a retail end. But when you're building a site, that becomes the first thing I realized quickly is that becomes it. That's the end all be all. Having anything else as far as side stuff, whatnot, it truly enveloped my life, a good portion of my life at that period of time. Working 3 to 4 hours a day as far as it's concerned.
So this is something you didn't do full time. This was an ancillary side,
exactly,
secondary gig.
Yeah, exactly. I said 3 or 4 hours a day on it, but that just touches the surface because sometimes I would be up till like 2, 3 in the morning working on articles, doing research. And then eventually Nick's participation, he got limited because of family issues. So 3, 4 hours a day became 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a day sometimes as far as working on it, providing articles, looking up information, trying to find out things on the internet, setting up for podcasts, learning how to code on the fly. And that was something that I wasn't sure I was going to be initiated into because it was a different kind of coding than when I worked into the special effects industry, 15 years at that time, 13 years earlier. So it was kind of a different thing indeed, because I didn't have any formal training on this type of coding on HTML and whatnot. So you have to initiate yourself on that and learn all that aspect. And it's just like, wow, so overwhelming at that point in time.
So that's an interesting thing, because when we talk about, and with people here on the show, there's this perception that, you just get to be creative and think about things all day long, and you get to just imagine wonderful worlds or write songs or whatever. And it's like,
no,
there's nothing. I think a lot of people think that we have to do above and beyond what we want to do. There's a whole bunch that we need to do in order to feed that thing. So you're talking about, you want this site, this brand, this show, in this drive, you're trying to get there, but then you start identifying all these different skills that you need to bring back in that may or may not relate to what you're going after.
Exactly. You need people skills, because not only do you need to relate to get people involved as far as interested in your product, to follow it, to listen to it, to watch it, what have you, but also getting people involved to help you with it. And because you can't promise them money because you're not generating anything, and you're just hoping that they have the same passion as you do as far as working from a voluntary standpoint. And fortunately, that was the one thing I will take away from GameSource. Probably the best thing is I met so many great people that really wanted to be a part of something and worked on it and really gave, at times when they could, a great effort into doing it. And I met so many good people with so many great thoughts, great voices, great opinions. You, for example, with great insight. I know you're laughing at that right now when I say that, but without GameSource, I would have never met you, and also dozens of other people who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and have a tremendous amount of thankfulness that they were, at least at that time, a good part of my life.
So the early days of GameSource.
The early days.
has you learning code, building stuff, putting out there, going from 3 to 4 hours to sometimes 7, 8, 9 hours, depending on your partner's ability to participate.
You got to remember, I'm trying to be a full-time dad. I'm still working as far as regular jobs and whatnot. So it's just, but
are you reaching out to other people to help take some of the workload off? When do some of the secondary cast come in?
Well, it trickled in first. Obviously Nick was in and out and whatnot, but there was also Chris Bonner. He a really nice guy. He came in and stepped in, and he got his good friend Corey, and they became an integral part for years as far as it's concerned, and at least from the podcasting end, provided many a moment of clarity and levity as well. Samantha Paremba, she's just was just a pistol that came in and just right away, just after some initial nervousness about being part of it, as far as what is this all about, to really embracing it, and her work was just truly outstanding. And I just know that her passion for video games is just something that I can really relate to. And whenever she came on, it was just really you just understood clearly what her passion was all about. And then like I said, it trickled in as far as a lot of other individuals. Both Stephanie and Jeremiah Johnson, also as well Bryce and Sarah Martinez. How could I be remiss if I didn't say?
I feel like you're at an award show.
Exactly, and I want to thank Jamie Monroy. There's just so many individuals that have been a part of Game Source in and out. Based on their time, that were just that part I love the most was when we were really, there was a period of time in about, I guess, say 2012, 2013 that really had about,
which is when I started to meet you guys, more or less.
We had about
13, 14.
15, 20 people that were contributing to it, and it was really just, that was a good time because,
go ahead.
Everything was correlating and everything was starting to be good. We started the numbers as far as hits to the site, as far as downloads of the podcast and things of that nature. It was nice. You saw where it could go and the potential it could get because of it. And it was a nice feeling at that time because you started to see things click and you started to see, all these people had great insight once they were on and they had things to say that was just really awesome. And we had supporters like Michael and also as well Katie that were just really, really just supporting the cause and doing great things as far as trying to get the word out there on what Game Source was making so special.
So now that you have this is kind of a two-parter. First, let's just clarify what did your role become once you had a team? Were you still doing the same thing? Were you doing less of it? Were you delegating?
Well, I was trying to delegate as far as people just putting out stories, and then also getting them as far as we started really getting into the PR end as far as started talking to developers, started talking to publishers about getting games, and that was really a benefit and a side thing that I didn't expect at first, but really was happy about. Yeah, early access, press reviews. I was getting people into cons, which whenever you can get someone that's truly excited about going to a certain convention or a certain event or whatnot, and you can get them in as press, that's great for me. And I obviously want to get their story and get it out to the public on whatever it is that they're doing. But you can sense their excitement and about the individuals that normally would have to go and pay a lot of money to do this, go to this event that they would normally go to anyways, and to be going in as free and going in as press to make them, you could feel that they felt themselves being special, and to have that feeling that you helped them get to that point was really kind of cool because and Game Source, we were doing that. We were getting people into a whole bunch of events, E3s, at the height of we were doing it. We were doing very well as far as that's concerned from a small standard. I mean, there was still.
Well, we'll talk about checks and balances for success
because
soon.
There's a lot of checks. I can tell you that as well. So.
What I'm curious to learn about and share with everybody listening, and something that I deal with all the time is It's great once you can get to that position where you yourself are much more of a producer or editorial kind of figure, and you can start delegated and receiving materials and best positioning the chess pieces for that kind of dream that you have at the beginning. It's like, okay, now that I have 10 people on board and they're each giving me consistent things and they're each varied and they're each kind of in their own lane, you can best kind of position how that gets out there.
Yeah.
When I first kind of threw it at you, it was a two-man show, two-man race, if you will, the two-man horse costume, you and Nick, and people are trickling in.
There was a horse's something, but I won't say what it was.
People are trickling in. How are you deciding who is a part of the team and who isn't? And is it just everybody is welcome? What are you looking for in people? And maybe walk me through like the team building experience and what you learned from it now.
Well, there's a lot of things that went into it as far as, obviously the interest level. What is your interest level? And basically, how can you translate your passion about video games at that time to an audience? Can you do it basically what is your time commitment? Is it based off of what can you write as far as a quality article that people can read comfortably and be able to understand at a cohesive level and be able to translate that to an audience? Is it something that could be marketed and pushed through social media that's hey, this article is really good and I think you should really take a chance to read it? And if that's the case, then really just you could see that passion flowing through there. But also, do you want to come on the podcast? Do you want to share your voice to the world as far as your love for video games on whatever topic we were dealing with at that time was virtually week to week basis? So
for you, it's almost the doors were open, and if somebody didn't want to be a part of it, you would either let them hang themselves or it'd become clear.
That's all you can do. When you're working with the voluntary basis, that's all you can do.
I think you can kind of set some guidelines saying, look, this is what I need from you, and if you can't meet this, then it's not going to be a good fit.
Then you're selling yourself short, and as far as that end from
so I guess
trying to reach
the conundrum is how much do you take all these people that want to do something with the headache that some of them might not contribute
exactly or might not contribute as much as you want or need
or they promised
or promised exactly, and so that's the problem. That's the conundrum that went into so many years of doing it, and a lot of times I was left with holding the bag, and a lot of times that was like a 2, 3, 4 a.m. deal where I'm doing something that we had committed to that kind of if it wasn't done, you would lose face with a publisher or developer, and you had to take over a project as far as it's concerned, where you have to review a game that was going to be reviewed by someone else, but you'd have to take over the review because, and review that game, because if it wasn't, then certain guidelines weren't being met, or, this article needed to be published as far as that's concerned. And, you have to play through that game, or you have to go ahead and do something that you weren't prepared to do normally in order to get that accomplished. And that was kind of rough, but then again, after.
But the price was right.
Because
it was free, right?
Yeah, the price was right because it's free, but at what cost? Because you like I said, when you're doing this and you look at yourself and you're typing things up, and you're up at 3:30 in the morning, and then you look up and you look out and you wonder, why are you doing this? How many people are reading this? How many people do you think this is going to come across to? And do they understand that what you're doing is going to make sense to people, and what you're going to do is really that pertinent as far as from an entertainment standpoint? Is it really worth it what you're doing? And a lot of times I did ask myself that question over the past 7 years, and
ask myself every day.
Is it worth it? Is it worth it? And I can tell you at this point in time where I try to provide a better balance in my life. I think it is worth it, but at that time it left me many questions because, especially when you're going and getting, for every good thing that you're doing and whatnot, you get an email sent to you with someone who thinks they know what they're doing because they run their own little gaming site, and which closed long before mine did, but they said, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing, and I don't think you should be doing this, and why are you sharing information? And that's kind of really, it's kind of stupid, and la 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 la, and you're like asking yourself, okay, I'm just doing my thing here. I don't want your opinion. I don't need your opinion if it's not going to be something that's going to help me or help my site. If it's something that somebody that is interested in our product reads and say, hey, it's not a good review, then that's one thing. But if you're telling me that my site is this because I know better and whatnot, and I look at your site and your site gets less views, less hits, less attention than mine, then, and that the only reason why is because somebody that has done something for us, stop.
Well, this is the internet.
This is the internet.
Everybody has email. Everybody has a keyboard. Thus they can have an opinion.
Just stop. Just choose something else in your life to go ahead and discuss. But
you bring up something really interesting, and that's how do we define success when we start down these projects?
Or when I send a crew down to E3, and you go down at E3, and they come back from E3 and say, hey, how's everything going? It's great. I appreciate all the stuff that you sent me there. From there, it's great. And then they tell you that they sat down with another local gaming site. And I've always been, and you know me, Rob, I've always been the type of individual, I want to work with as many people as possible. When it's awesome when you can get other entities, other podcasts, other sites involved as far as it's concerned. And that's one reason why PCC is just so awesome right now is because so many people, individual groups are involved. But at that time, when I was dealing with Game Source, I was trying to get anybody involved as far as other small groups in the area so we could build a larger experience. And unfortunately, those days were met with either people ignoring us or just not even wanting to say hi to you. To, like I said, when Jamie got back with the group from E3, he told me, and paraphrasing here, he sat down with a leader of a site similar to what we were doing, and saying, well, when I own you, it's like, what are you saying here? We're all small entities right now. We're all small fish in a big pond that could get swallowed up by an IGN or a GameSpot or, at that time, or Kotaku at that time, just like nothing.
Let's talk about that. We'll jump back to how do we define success in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
What is the nature of competition, and does that help or hinder the creativity? Does it create more barriers than are necessary? As a filmmaker, every year there's going to be thousands of films that get released that I have zero contact with.
At the level Game Source was at, because, at our peak was 50, 60, 70,000, 80,000 hits a month, which is, as you know, IGN gets like a drop in a day. That's a drop. That's a minuscule drop as far as an hour for them. But for us, that's a huge month. And for most of these other similar sites as ours, that's a big month and whatnot. And we're getting views and we're getting downloads and whatnot. That's great, but it's not anywhere near where the big guys are. But you're happy with what you're doing and whatnot. But when these other entities that are similar are, and you just want a cooperation relationship, you only want to make their sites better, and in turn you're hoping that they want to make your site better as a shared experience, and they're going out and they think of themselves as a much higher entity than they actually are, and they haven't hit that, they haven't taken that reality pill and say, it's snapped out of it and say, okay, really, my site's small, I better try and go ahead and maybe work with others to make it a better experience. Or even if you just don't want to do that, just say, hey, I better get a grip on where I'm at and try to work forward from there. It's just, I met a lot of inflated egos, and I'm like, I haven't met this many inflated egos since I was, back in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that's the troubling part. It's just, you see, it's great that you have confidence in your product, but get a grip on where you are in the world as far as the internet, because the internet is a very, very huge place.
Yeah. So does these other sites and the nature of being creative in a world with other creative people, what are you, I guess the question to you is, because you are in a industry where anybody that has access to the internet and microphones for podcasting and keyboards can do this, what is it like to survive in that ecosystem?
Well, it's
And how do you define success in the face of others?
Well,
Or in contrast to them?
for me, success was, and still to this day, is even small steps. At that time, like I said, we were doing, at 50, 60, 70,000 hits according to what iPage was telling me. And I thought that was awesome. I thought that was where, I wouldn't say, getting a peak, but I just thought we were getting to a point with the voluntary contributions we were getting and the voluntary contribution I was making. I thought that was about the best we could do because, obviously if it goes any higher, you got to start worrying about making it a paid entity. You got to start working about, trying
there's
to
a
find,
tipping point.
Yeah, there's a tipping point where you have to try and commit to yourself and everybody else has to commit with you to make it an even larger project. Otherwise you might as well try and keep it the comfortable site the way it is. But I could see as far as the cracks starting to go and because people started, their lives had to come into context. And that's when you're dealing with that type of environment where it is voluntary and people have lives. People have to go ahead and take care of family issues, work changes, anything in their life or interest levels, whatnot. They may want to do something else. You have to understand that when you're dealing with this kind of industry and when you're dealing with that at the level that we were at, you have to understand that these people have got lives and you have to take it accordingly. You want a commitment, but I soon quickly realized, a couple of years in, you're not going to get the commitment ever that you want. And
so how do you creatively solve the volunteer conundrum then?
Unfortunately,
do you try to if you need 10 people, do you try to get 30?
Yeah, I mean that was my goal. If to this, me to this day. Okay, I have this many outlets that I'm on. Well, that's great, but I want more. I want more because I know that I cannot take it for granted what I have. And yes, at that time, I had 10, 15 people that were working at some point in time or contributing at some point in time to the project, to Game Source. I know at some point in time, I'm going to need more. So I kept on trying to get more people involved because I know it could only better the product overall.
So did that create an interesting microcosm where the more new people you brought on board, the more, was there a sense of internal competition amongst the people that had been there longer? In the same way that other sites were out there were feeling threatened by your site, or?
Well, no, actually, that's the part that was good because we obviously created, as you were embraced into it, and I remember the day that we brought you in as far as into that ecosystem, and you were like, I'm in, and you started.
I don't know if I did my sniding.
You started
whiplash.
the interaction. There was some interaction that most of the interaction was positive. Let's put it this way, but there was some interaction between individuals. It's just like. It's just like any other work. It's just like any other occupation where everybody, doesn't always get along. And there were some times that we're trying. I remember one podcast in particular where two of the individuals, it was a group podcast, and two of the individuals were I guess they didn't intentionally say some stuff as far as the concern that hit a nerve with someone else, but they did. And I remember on my birthday, up until 3:30 in the morning, hearing this person, vent their frustration, and they had every right to vent their frustration because, in one way it was warranted, but it's very hard to find and push those buttons and speak from a standpoint where you're all doing this on a voluntary basis again, and it goes back to it where you need to talk to the other individuals about trying to, in the future, go about it in a better fashion. Because I know it does, when you're running this type of format, there are some things that not everything's going to go pretty. And when it doesn't, you have to learn how to handle it accordingly. I mean, there's been stuff that I know that's been posted that I look at and I see, I'm like, gosh, why did this person post this? Or why did this person say this? Or why does this person do this? And you're just like, you got to go and talk to them. And one thing I've been able to learn over the course of my life is learn how to talk to people, I think, in a fair and decent fashion that a lot of people won't be able to understand. And I think that's one trait that I do have that I'm able to utilize very well.
So Game Source runs 9 years, ish.
Ish.
What are the major takeaways, and why the decision to launch the Pop Culture Cosmos?
I got tired after a while, and the contributions, you could see it has started over the years. Like I said, family got in the way of with some people, as far as I'd say it's family issues, family things, work issues. Life got in the way for a lot of these individuals, so their contributions became less and less. And even though we were getting more new people in from time to time, it was just harder to get that same level of contribution. So when you're not, as I would call it, content. If you're not getting in the content and you're not sending out the content, less people are going to watch the content or review the content or read the content. So our numbers started to go down and down and down because you're not getting the content that you once had. So people don't need to follow you as much as they once did. So it was a correlation. And I just saw that trend started to go down, and I saw the interest level go down. And actually, I got kind of bored. I wanted to talk about more than just entirely video games, and because there's a whole world of stuff going on out there. And I wanted to talk not only about video games, but I wanted to talk about so much more. So I started to bleed in with you, and I got to know some people that wanted to talk about more than just gaming. And although it didn't rub everybody the right way that I did, hey, I'm sorry. I wanted, there's more to life out there than video games. I love video games, been playing video games all my life, will play video games all my life. But there's a whole world of stuff to talk about there. And, you and I have gone into it as far as how much we enjoy talking about a whole bevy of stuff out there. And I know I started bleeding that into the Game Source podcast a little bit. And, I just thought about doing something even more. And so I called up my good friend Rob. Hey, Rob Arino. And
You did not say that.
And I said,
you sequestered me in a coffee shop, and you forced me to listen to your plan.
My pitch.
You did pitch me at a coffee shop, ironically.
Obviously it worked to some extent. You're here, right?
Well, this is my show. This is The Trenches.
Okay, fair enough. But you've been
Which will be featured on Pop Culture Cosmos.
At some point in time. But
what did you take from the Game Source days, and what are you bringing to Pop Culture Cosmos, and what are you leaving behind that won't come?
Well, I can say what I do bring is a level of experience with doing.
No, but like in terms of your approach to what you're trying to do with Pop Culture Cosmos.
Well,
what worked?
300 podcasts, you start to understand what works and what doesn't. You start to understand what can appeal to an audience and what doesn't. I mean, you start to learn that what segments didn't work, what segments did work, what translated well. And also things that you wanted to try that you couldn't. You wanted to talk to more individuals out there, or maybe you wanted to start doing segments that would go ahead and instead of just touch on one subject for an entire hour, touch on several subjects that still cut at the heart of the subject, but also goes ahead and doesn't get stale on you over the course of talking about it too much. And I wanted to go ahead and do those things, but also, when you work on a podcast so long on Game Source and podcasts and Game Source Plus One, you work on those podcasts for so long, you understand the back end as far as editing, producing, marketing it, trying to push it out there as far as make it an acceptable entity to an audience out there, and help them understand that this is a good product. You learn from that. You learn what works. You learn what doesn't. And you learn also as well how to run and manage a site as well, because like I said, we were getting a decent amount of hits for a small entity that we were, and you learn how to translate that into your next experience, which was running, helping run the site of PCC and helping run that experience as well to make it even better.
So, if success, at least in hindsight, for Game Source.
Plus also context. With that Game Source, one thing it did is I got to, like I said, I know the people. All the people I've known over the course of Game Source. Excuse me for interrupting. But I just wanted to make sure that I tell you that meeting you and meeting all the other individuals out there, it wouldn't have been possible without Game Source. And with that, I've been able to take that experience and some of those individuals from GameSource have moved over with me to PCC because they see that they want to talk about and write about and do more and have more people learn and have more people understand and be entertained by what's out there in pop culture. Not everybody's been cool with it. When I shut down yourgamesource.com, there's a lot of hard feelings out there. I can sense it. I can feel it. There's a lot of bitterness because they just want to stay within that video game realm, and I respect that. But I wanted to do more. I think there is more out there to talk about, and I'm ready to talk about it. I'm ready to show it. I'm ready to write about it, and I'm ready to have a lot of people come with me to go ahead on that train, and let's go right ahead and
don't shove your fist at me like that again.
To take care of that.
This is the pleasures of doing an interview in the studio.
Well, exactly, because I'm trying to express myself, but try and go on that PCC train.
Success for GameSource, at least in hindsight, was at least 70,000 hits. You got press contacts, you got industry access to events.
Yeah.
You were able to develop a network of volunteers and frequent contributors. Now,
at its height, it was really fun. It was a lot of work, but it was really fun.
But now already for Pop Culture Cosmos, the first month I think you had something like 1,800 listeners on the podcast before I even think you had the WordPress site up.
Yeah.
The second month you're already up like over 10,000 listeners. That's a huge leap just in 1 month, and I know you're still waiting on the returns for December 2016, and we can get to those numbers, down the road. Listen to Pop Culture Cosmos, you'll hear all about that. So you're already like, after like a month and a half, you're already like a huge dent towards, you're 25% towards what you already had before.
Well, we have a larger listening audience than we ever had with GameSource. I mean, we had several hundred downloads and whatnot with the podcast, but we were never on entities, that we were on now with PCC. And that's what's so rewarding is that you asked me what makes me happy as far as is concerned and what makes me surprised. And, I know Doug had said that
from Retro City Games.
Yeah, Retro City Games. And he said, he was just happy with a couple 300 listeners and whatnot. And then when I show him 8,000, and then when I show him that our audience is now over 10,000 from all the different entities and whatnot, he's just like, he was bowled over. And for me, that's just so satisfying indeed, because we do have in just a short period of time a much larger audience than I ever had with GameSource from an audience standpoint, from a listening standpoint. And I think it just eventually just translates over into what we write about on the site.
So is this just a numbers game now? You're just hoping to get to the next threshold and then the next one after that?
You
so
set
10,
yourself goals.
25, 50, 100. But what does success mean? So like in 10 years from now, if Pop Culture Cosmos shuts down for whatever reason, maybe it's a new project that you want to pursue. Maybe you have an opportunity you can't say no to. Maybe GameSpot hires you as, one of their editors and something like that. Because they obviously dabble in other things other than games as well now. Yeah. Same with IGN.
Yes.
What are you hoping to look back and say, wow, we did all of these things? What would you like to see?
Well, I'm hoping PCC will be the entity that catapults a lot of us that work on it to a higher realm. But you just want to make something, whether you're trying to get one person to listen, or you're trying to get one person to read it, or you're trying to get 10 or 100,000. You just want to make sure that you have a product worth listening to, that you have make a product worth watching. And yes, I do have goals and whatnot. I'm about ready to finally graduate from college as far as with my
degree
bachelor's
in journalism. Yeah.
Yep. So whether I get a job in the industry from that or from PCC, what have you, my door is now opening to a lot of other options, and it's great because PCC is, as you and I talked about in the past, as far as what we're looking for now. We're not just looking at game or video game related stuff. We're taking a look at a whole different avenue of stuff, not just video games. It's video games, it's film we're looking into. We're looking at TV. We're looking into a whole different aspect of a world, and to me that's exciting because each day it's like, okay, what stories do I want to come up with to write about, or to what stories do I want to come up with to do interviews on or whatnot? And it's so much more fun to look at because the universe is now just so much more wide open than just focusing on what we need to do as far as the video game scene.
Well, I thank you for your time today on the trenches. Obviously, you've heard it all here, fresh from the man himself, the importance of team building, embracing new technology, taking a chance, knowing when to call it quits, and yet knowing how to transition to new other opportunities that present themselves. For more people that spend their lives doing creative things, keep listening to The Trenches. I'm your host, Rob McCallum, and we'll see you next time.